Good evening and welcome to tonight's show from DJNTV, Disc Jockey News TV. Tonight's show is brought to you by Electra Voice, DJ Event Planner, DJ Trivia, Odyssey Innovative Designs and Cases, NLFX Professional, Promo Only, and the DJNTV Insiders.
DJ Event Planner will change the way you manage and run your business. Streamline all of your procedures and software into one easy-to-manage system. DJ Event Planner, the ultimate online planning tool.
Welcome to DJNTV and Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe. Now introducing the one and only Ben Stowe.
Yeah, baby! Yeah.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe. Tonight we're going to teach you all about how to get those little wrinkles out of the noodles in your lasagna. No? Wrong show? Wrong show.
I think I'm on the wrong show.
Dang it.
Yeah. Sorry, everybody.
Well,
my wife's not even here to save me. She went out to get ice cream. So there will be an ice cream break at some point during the show. We're just gonna have to put a pause on it so I can eat some. Y'all understand, right? Everybody's with me.
Everybody,
Yeah?
they know what you're talking about. Thank you for joining us tonight. We are broadcasting everywhere, like over here and over there, and folks are joining us. So it should be working on YouTube. Edwin, what happens is that Facebook gets the signal about 10 to 15 seconds ahead of YouTube. So if you had both windows up, you'll see it here, but not there until that 30 seconds. But I'm watching it right now. I see Dave and Jimmy and Gus and Super Rockin' DJ Smash. That's got to be the most awesome YouTube name.
Jimmy, is that Jimmy DePalma?
Yeah, yep.
So, okay, I got to say something publicly. He just made a post, and said, smartest guy I know. And then he said, sorry, Howie Darkstar. I'm going to go on record and say that I think Howie is smarter. I'm going to go on record and say that I think I'm in second place. So
Howie is one of these guys that is, and not that you don't have a wide knowledge, but he's one of these guys that can talk tech. He can talk music.
Yeah, he's next level. He's just,
yeah.
You know what? I don't mind being second place to a guy like Howie.
Yeah, he's a great conversation. When he gets on he can come on and he could talk with you and I. He could go talk with Brian. And in both cases, he's probably the smartest guy by far in the room. Doesn't take much with me on the other side, but that's okay.
He's my geek brother. I love him. I'll tell you what.
So tonight, gang, we're gonna. This question has come up time and time again, and in the last week it came up again. And I was looking for a video. It's like we talked about the wattage thing, the whole wattage situation, and the question became is if I've got a 2,000 watt speaker and I have a 1,000 watt speaker, the 2,000 watt speaker must be better. And it comes back to the whole, does the wattage matter when it comes to speakers? And I went through and it's like, we have to have this show. Ben and I have talked about this. Ben, I bet we've talked about it 20 different times. Easily 20 times. I went through and typed, does wattage matter? Or wattage matter? Or speaker watt? And we haven't done a show specifically titled that. So I went over to Google and started typing this in. It's one of the first results that comes up, and it has been searched a gazillion times. So tonight, we're doing this show. For you out there, if you're wondering. So If you're thinking about upgrading speakers and you're looking at, this is a 2,000 watt amp and this is a 1,500 watt amp and this one has a 500 to the low frequency driver and this has 250 to the... Tonight, we're going to talk about the wattage and does it matter? So, Ben, the question in front of you tonight is, does that wattage with those speakers matter?
Yeah, it does. It does matter. But why is probably not for the same reasons that a lot of people think. So obviously, we're going to cover a lot of ground tonight and expect a few references to some of the other shows that we've done, just because some of these topics have been covered, ad nauseum. Which, by the way, I don't know if you know, but the literal translation of that is to the point of being sick. So just see, Howie, I can roll with you on this. Anyway, we've covered these various topics in some really cool ways. Recently, we did one where we talked about, crest factor and power and those sorts of things. So expect some of that, for additional information. Go out and watch some of these shows. But yeah, I think we can cover it in pretty fast order. Now, that being said, does wattage matter? Yes, it does, but for a couple reasons. One, there is a correlation between wattage and loudness, but there's a big it depends coming on that. So we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that.
Yeah, I was going to say you've waited 6 minutes to get the it depends, and I thought I set it up where we'd have that it depends within the first 2 minutes.
Is the drinking game still on? Are we still drinking when I say that?
We are gentlemen, so we don't do that, said the guy who's sitting in front of all those different little shot glassy things behind you there.
They're hurricane glasses, and I didn't say what I was drinking, so... I know we made some raging alcoholics on the last show, and we started dropping all those logarithmic calculations. I know we did, but
either they made them that, or they gave them a headache or something.
Since we failed to get a good iced tea endorsement, I'm not going to say whose I'm drinking. So Anyway, so my ADHD is in full force tonight. But so one, there is that relationship between wattage and loudness, but it is really not what people think. Two, of course, there is a relationship between wattage that an amplifier is using, whether it's in a speaker or out of a speaker, amplifiers, and the power we're drawing from the wall. So we could have a wildly inefficient speaker that uses lots and lots and lots of watts and requires large circuit breakers and large cords, but doesn't really do much in terms of sound. So yeah, it matters. Those are probably the two biggest reasons why. And I'm not even sure in that order, and then of course, if we're talking about passive systems, wattage really matters because it's important to pair up an amplifier appropriately with the speaker. So then it matters because we're trying to match two components. In the powered speaker realm, it matters less in that regard, but the first two things are still very much on the table.
Let's dig into it then. So it kind of does matter, but it doesn't matter if it's blue speakers on Thursday. It matters if it's aiming to the southeast. I'm just trying to follow along, making sure I got it.
Well, I suppose the direction might matter some, because if your audience is at the southeast, you should probably point them that way. And then, of course, if the winds are anyway.
I've been listening. I got this down.
Good. All right. Excellent. So. Let's see. So many different places to go here. I'm not even sure really where to start. So I think this is just a good jumping off point, and then we're going to cover I've got a bunch of windows open on my computer. You'll know why my ADHD is going nuts, because I thought of all the different ways that we could cover this and tried to anticipate a few of the questions our viewers might have. But first and foremost, let's talk about that relationship between power and loudness. Critically important is you don't listen to watts. Watts is not a measure of sound. No more than watts is a measure of light output. So, we're well accustomed to hearing light bulbs referred to by wattage, but that doesn't necessarily correlate at all with lumens, which is a measure of light output. Certainly we see that with compact fluorescent and LED, those sorts of things being much more efficient. So for the amount of power we put into a light bulb, we get a certain amount of light out of the light bulb. So if that makes any sense, loudspeakers are really, very similar in that regard. I think I hear the ice cream. Is the ice cream? Oh, look at this. See, I do have a wife, by the way. You
Wow.
see that?
Hello.
Nobody believes that I have a wife. And you know what? She's hot, too.
All right. Well, you know, that clip's going to be used somewhere else.
My funeral. You know what? Listen, I'm sorry, ADHD moment again here, but I don't know why people are so surprised and they're like, wow, Ben has a pretty wife. Yeah.
And she's really nice, too.
She is. And that part surprises a lot of people that, you know, anyway, yeah, she's wonderful. She's a very kind person. She's a wonderful mother.
That video clip's going to be used again and again because it looks so good.
How much is it going to cost me, John?
So anyway, you were saying about speakers and lights and wattage and brightness and lumens. I've been listening.
Okay, good. So back to speakers. And now I have to sit and look at this ice cream. So basically what we need to do is we need to look at the initial sensitivity of the loudspeaker. Some engineers don't like when we call that efficiency because as far as transducers go, which is a device that converts one form of energy into another, loudspeakers aren't very efficient, but it's the same thing. And so basically, if we talk about the efficiency of a loudspeaker, we know how much audio we're going to get out for the amount of power we put in. And you know what? I'm gonna in a second, I'm going to bring up a spreadsheet that a friend of mine made, who's one of the best audio engineers I know. And I'm so thrilled that I actually made a contribution to the spreadsheet. I'm going to send it back to him because, okay, I might be the third smartest guy after Howie and this guy. Anyway, but I still got a good-looking wife, so you know it doesn't matter. And I got ice cream.
Yeah, you do.
Anyway.
So the rest of the show is going to be Ben sharing a screen of some graphic, and you're going to hear brain freeze. Oh,
that seems about right. You know, it's funny. I don't know if he's actually watching or not, but a friend of mine is the CEO of a local public television station, and he actually mentioned something that he might tune in tonight. He's very much a geek. Okay, now I'm the fourth smartest guy. No, I keep going down the list.
Wow.
Anyway, he's a really smart guy, and if he's watching, this will be the first show he's ever watched, and it'll probably be the last. So, pretty sure.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't think he's going to be offering a contract for you to come in and do your show on public television. Just going to say it.
I don't think that was ever even in the cards. I think he was just curious what we were doing, and I think he's probably satisfied his curiosity at this point. Exactly. So, anyway, let's talk about this efficiency. And so what's critically important here is to understand that every time we double the power, we gain 3 decibels, okay? And a decibel is not a linear measurement. It's a logarithmic measurement that helps us to quantify sound as we experience it in the world. It allows us humans to put a number on what we hear. So basically think about it this way. We've got our initial, 1 watt equals certain number of decibels. When we increase our power to 2 watts, we gain 3 more. And then when we increase the power to 4 watts, we gain 3 more. And then when we increase the power to 8 watts, we gain 3 more. And so the punchline of this, though, is that increasing from 1 watt to 2 watt gets you 3 dB. Increasing from 100 watts to 200 watts gets you 3 dB. Increasing from 1,000 watts to 2,000 watts gets you 3 dB. Increasing from 10,000 to 20,000. At that point, so we can see that while wattage is important, that sensitivity and that efficiency of the device is going to be far more important. Mm-hmm. Before we go on, I've got a spreadsheet that, again, I'm going to bring up and show you that. But before we go on, another thing that is really important to understand is not only is loudness not really demonstrated by a wattage number, certainly you can't take 2 speakers and say, well, this one's 1,000 watts and this one's 2,000 watts, therefore the 2,100 watt is louder. That's not always the case. So it doesn't mean really anything in that regard. The other thing is it doesn't tell us how good it sounds. It doesn't tell us what it covers. Wattage really tells us very, very little, other than how much electrical energy it uses when it's operating. So I'm going to pop up this spreadsheet real quick here. Yeah. It's been so long since we did a show. Let's see if I can remember how.
Right there at the bottom there.
I got it, John.
Excellent.
All right.
Excellent.
So You see the screen that says that has the yellow boxes and oh, we're not ready for that screen. That was, by the way, remember the last show we did? It was a while ago. We talked about crest factor and power. That was my contribution to this spreadsheet. I created that new tab for this spreadsheet. So maybe we'll dig that out here just for fun. Okay, right now you should see a 1 meter, 1 watt sensitivity rating of 1, which of course isn't realistic at all. No speaker is that bad. And then the amount of power we're going to apply and the distance from the speaker to the listener. And in this case, I don't want to change that number because I just want to demonstrate the power.
Yeah.
Now, real quick, stop share of that. And I'm going to share something else real quick. This is a spec sheet from a passive loudspeaker. Okay. Everybody just memorize this real quick. Rated system power, 600 watts continuous, 2,400 watts peak. Okay. Just make a note if you're playing along at home. Now, take a look here at our axial sensitivity. Okay, 98 dB, 1 watt, 1 meter. Max calculated SPL, 132 dB. Everybody remember those numbers? Well, of course, I can't hear you, so I'm just going to say that
they are. I can see their brains working. Although
if not, you got the benefit of the rewind button if you watch the replay. So let's go ahead and stop this share and go back to my spreadsheet. Okay, so let's enter the information that we had, and I believe it was a sensitivity of 98.
Yep.
If I remember correct.
Start there. Yep.
And I'm going to apply peak power.
Okay.
Which was 2,400 watts.
Yes.
Now the spreadsheet or the spec sheet showed us that it would be 132, and we can see that when I enter that, we do have a power indicated here at 132. Now disregard where it says program and peak because I just punched that in to get this number. But we also remember that it said a continuous rating was 600. And so if I punch in 600, we can see there's my continuous, and there, in fact, is my peak at 132.
Okay.
So what's the moral of the story? Let's just for fun, let's play with some numbers here.
Sure.
I'm gonna punt. But let's take this 98 dB loudspeaker, and let's apply 1,000 watts to it. Let's just pretend it could do that.
Okay.
We now have, by the way, look at that. The difference only changed by 3 dB.
Yeah, not much at all.
From 600 to 1,000. So we're using 400 watts more power, but we're only gaining, a couple dB more here as we understand. So just for fun, let's, you know what? No, let's go crazy.
Let's go crazy.
Crazy, John?
That's
I want to
awesome.
go crazy. So I'm looking at this ice cream melting in front of me. All right, 2,000. We're going to go 2,000 watts.
2,000 watts of power.
2,000 watts of power.
Tonight only on... Oh, sorry.
Only if lightning hits it. Okay, so let's say now we've got a continuous SPL of 131. Just for fun, okay? Jot that down. 131 continuous dB SPL. Now, let's take a different speaker that has a sensitivity. Let's go 1,000 watts, and let's change our sensitivity to 101.
Ooh.
So, and again, there's no magic here, 3 dB. I understand by changing this 3 dB, I can have my power and have the same result. But that's my point, is by making the speaker 3 dB more sensitive, assuming all other things are equal, the loudness is the same, and I'm using half the power from the wall.
Sure.
Half. So in a lot of ways, it reminds me of a conversation I had at NAMM with a loudspeaker manufacturer who shall remain nameless. I'm going to protect the guilty, but several years ago, they were talking about a new generation of an existing line of speakers, and they said, and it's improved, it uses more, it has more watts. And I looked at the specs and I said, but it doesn't get as loud. They said, yeah, but it's more watts. I said, that's not an improvement. You're going backwards. That's like telling me that my car will now get less miles per gallon, and that's better.
That's like telling you that ice cream is better when it's melty.
That's cold, John. You cut me deep there. That's.
I mean, I don't know where that came from. It just was, seemed like something that was just.
You know what?
Just gonna pull that out of thin air. I don't know where right. I came up with that.
It's melting all over my desk.
It is. So
it's
Ben,
delicious now.
one of the questions as I'm looking at this is I have seen speakers with a sensitivity that 1 watt, 1 meter rating of 101. What is what kind of the most sensitive number have you seen when it comes to pro audio? When it comes to that 1 watt, 1 meter,
when you get to 101, 102, you know,
that's pretty much you're at the peak of.
Well, I wouldn't say you're at the peak, but that's definitely getting up there. You know, I mean, I guess I don't know is the short answer. I haven't really kept track. I have seen ones though that are up in the hundreds, but at some point, you know, the same principles apply in terms of, you know, extracting that level of efficiency out of a loudspeaker. At some point, you're running out of the ability to do more of that, you know? So,
and if I'm not
curious to look though, you know?
And if I'm not mistaken, I think I have tested speakers on the other side that have been in the upper 80s. Is that, am I remembering that properly?
Probably. Yeah. I mean, and that was the point I was just going to make too, is that there are some that are, rather than talking about, you know, how much better than 101 we can get, let's focus on how much worse we can get.
Right. So
just for the sake of comparison, let's change that to 90. Well, that speaker is half as loud. Half. 10 dB is half as loud, you know, or twice as loud, depending, obviously, if we went up or down. So, you know, by changing that from, you know, 101 to 90, we drop that by half. Now, let's just for fun, let's see how much power it would take to match that. So let's see. Not there yet. Oh, there we are.
There you go.
12,000 watts.
And you know, I think that 8-inch speaker on the other side is 12,000 watts.
You know, and I'll tell you what, I'm just going to be a mean guy. You know, I'm obviously a very nice guy, and I love people in this industry, and I'm happy to, you know, to help bring people up to that level. But I'm just going to be that guy for a minute. You know, here's the deal. If I'm the guy with the 101 dB sensitivity loudspeaker with 1,000 watts, and you're the guy that's running around talking about your 12,000 watt speaker, I'm going to say you're an idiot. You know, I mean, because the reality is both of us can produce 131 dB, but you need to tie into a breaker panel to do it. You know, I mean, I could run two of them off of a single 20 amp circuit, trouble free, you know? And at the end of the day, obviously for my gigs, I am unloading big trucks and I'm hauling around big cables and that sort of thing, but I'm also dealing with very high efficiency loudspeakers. I'm doing those things because I'm providing extreme levels of sound for large events. Most DJs probably, I mean, the trend is really going the other direction. The trend is not going towards, let's take semis to shows and bring in 4-aught copper to run a very inefficient speaker. The trend is, let's go to something like the Evolve 50, which is very lightweight, you know, easy to transport, that sort of thing, or even the larger powered loudspeakers. But every part of a DJ's rig now is becoming more portable, you know, not less. So this really illustrates the point that, you know, to make up for that 10 dB difference in efficiency, we're talking about changing our power to like 12,000, which is absurd.
Yeah.
I mean, simply absurd.
Yeah.
More to the point, I said this in another show, and I guess it bears repeating. Be suspicious of specs, and the less believable they are, the more suspicious you should be. First of all, nobody tests, to my knowledge, to 12,000 watts for a DJ speaker. I do know of touring class subwoofers that are tested to 16,000 watts, and they're legit. Wow. By the way, they also have an efficiency, I think, of 101. They get to like 147 dB. Let's just see if that works out about right. Yeah, we're in the neighborhood here, where, you know, a legit touring sub will get up in like, you know, 147, something like that, and that is excruciating pain. But again, you're not finding that at the DJ level. One, I'd be very suspect of a loudspeaker that has an efficiency in the 80s or low 90s. I'd be concerned about it anyway, maybe, you know. Two, I'd be suspicious about loudspeakers that are very inexpensive and boast very big numbers. Some of these companies don't develop their own product. They don't have testing facilities to, really vet these metrics. And, what you're left with is just complete nonsense, basically. I mean, I think they're really just making stuff up, and others, like I said in this other show, they're kind of stretching things a bit. So, it's just a cautionary word on specs, I guess.
Sure.
We talked in a previous show about crest factor, and kind of talked about how, that's a great show to watch, by the way. How can you run a 2,000 watt speaker off of a 20 amp circuit? We talked about the power they really consume. Again, that was my contribution to this, was saying, okay, if we've got a 1,000 watt amplifier with a crest factor of 3, we're really only using 500. We have a crest factor of like 9 or something. Our amplifier is not really producing 1,000 watts. It's peaking at 1,000 watts perhaps, but over an average, it's producing far less. So that helps explain how some of these things are possible. But I'm going to stop my share here. But I think that explains to a degree the relationship between watts and loudness, and why it's only important because we have to find those watts in the wall. We have to provide that power, but more is really not necessarily better.
So then when a company A is talking about having a speaker that can handle 2,000 or is a 2,000 watt amplifier, and company B has a 1,000 watt amplifier, are those watts or are those devices tested to be, is that going to be a legit measurement, or could it be that that company A with a 2,000 watt amplifier may not test as strong as somebody else's 1,000 watt amplifier?
Yes, to all of the above. A friend once said that he's not aware of any government agency that's actually policing spec sheets, and said that if they were, there'd probably be a lot of people in jail. So I think that's a possibility. There are some industry established standards for testing, EIA and that sort of thing. Most of these legitimate manufacturers will quantify their data by saying, this is how we tested it. Was this tested with a 1 kilohertz tone, or was this tested with broadband energy? How did we arrive at this? What test material did we use? But absolutely. And that's another thing that becomes a bit stickier is, see, loudspeaker companies want to sell loudspeakers. That's how they pay their rent, so to speak. That's how they stay in business. And so it becomes a slippery slope. Once company A does something with their specs, whether they stretch it a little bit or they use a different number, different testing system, something that makes their results look more favorable, company B is under the same pressure, because consumers are not as educated as they should be. Kudos to you for watching, because now you will be. You're a bit more savvy, and frankly, you can really use that to vet those results. You can hold people like me a bit more accountable. You can hold the manufacturers a bit more accountable by saying, okay, how do we get to this result?
Sure.
So that's a part of it. They have to sell loudspeakers, and if they were ultra honest, or maybe that's a bad way to say it, but you know what I'm saying. They have to find ways to compete. So I think that becomes some of the temptation too, where we look at passive loudspeakers and we see things like program and continuous and peak. Did in the wrong order, continuous, program, peak. Yeah. But anyway, it just follow along. It's all I'm thinking about is the ice cream over here. You so distracted. It's not right. Did you put my wife up to this? I think
I didn't, but if I would have known it was going to have this effect, it would have been.
It would totally
would have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I know your wife too, so you just watch it there, buddy boy.
Yeah, she's too busy working.
So what we see typically with powered loudspeakers often is, peak ratings, and we see crazy things like 1,000 watts being applied to the high frequency driver, when that's just never going to use that. It might have the power capacity there, but it's really never going to, manifest itself in results. And so again, we have to drill down, and understand these things better. There's an old saying that numbers lie and liars use numbers, and again, I'm not saying these manufacturers are all liars. In fact, I think most of them are probably not liars, but they are playing the marketing game. And I've seen this firsthand. Good companies, but again, they have a mandate to sell a product. So engineering comes out with this graph that shows a frequency response of a loudspeaker, and marketing says, if we just take that data and don't change it, but just stretch the image a little bit, it looks flatter. Yes, it does. The data is the same, but it's now slightly deceiving. Here's another thing. Speaking of spec sheets, love this. Let me go back. I'm just going to take a look at this one. No, this one doesn't show. Okay. Some will, oh, yes, it does. Oh, yes, it does. Good. We're going back to a screen share. Okay, we got our spec sheet back up here.
Yep.
Now, take a look down here. See here where it says half space measurement.
Half space measurement.
At the very bottom. Can you see that?
How far down? No, net weight is as far down as we go.
Oh, you guys can't see below net weight, huh?
No.
Shoot. Well, I apologize. That appears to be something I can't share with you.
Well, it's a little. What it is a little one, and it's a half weight measurement. Like there is a. It's a reference.
Can you see at the very bottom where it says half space measurement?
Yep, I can see it now. Yep, it was.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to manipulate it so you could see it. That is critically important. So what that's telling us is that this speaker's results were provided to us in half space. And that's important because based on that, we understand the data better. Okay. Half space means there is a single boundary, like a floor or a wall. And that is going to create about a 3 dB increase in the loudspeaker sensitivity. It's going to appear 3 dB more sensitive. Now, in a subwoofer or something like that, it's pretty common. It's going to sit on the floor. But if I fly this speaker out in open space, or what we would call full space, now it's what we call this full space measurement. It's going to be 3 dB less efficient than it appears. Same speaker, same everything else. Only difference is no boundary. And that's half space is pretty common. Full space is pretty common for install loudspeakers and that sort of thing. But I could, if I was a dishonest person, I could take this same loudspeaker and I could put it into quarter space or eighth space. I could stick it in a corner and gain like 9 dB, which, as we saw, to make up for that 9 dB, I had to go to almost 12,000 watts.
Yeah.
So I could make it appear as though this loudspeaker is not as bad as it is. This one's not bad, by the way. But I'm just saying, we could take a bad loudspeaker and
make it better, or make it the perception to be
better.
Yeah,
it wouldn't even be dishonest because the specs would be real. But I think it's dishonest if you don't declare it. And I think it's dishonest because darn well people don't really understand that.
Yeah.
So we didn't lie. We just really tried every way to lie to you without lying to you. And again, I wouldn't do that. I don't make loudspeakers anyway, and I also wouldn't buy a speaker from a company that measured something in eighth space. Like, get out of here with that nonsense. All the ice cream in the world would make me feel better about that. Something else I want to point out too is frequency response. Now we're not talking about loudness anymore, but it's just another way that specs can vary. If we look up here at the top, we could see two frequency response numbers. One says minus 3 dB and one says minus 10. So by simply changing how much tolerance we have in the response, I could argue that this speaker is 39 to 20K. And that is true. But I'm much more interested in its 3 dB response, so I would say that this is 58 to 18. This manufacturer's given us both numbers, and I appreciate that very much. So
does that mean then if we would be graphing that out, that when it got to the ends, then there would be a drop to...
Yeah, I bet I have that. Let's take a look here. I just got to dig in my hard drive a quick minute. Y'all will bear with me. That's not it. There it is. Oh, even better. I found something better. You're going to love this.
Said the guy who's watching his ice cream melt to the side.
Yeah, I'm not loving that.
Yeah.
Do you know what, people? Family, I do it for you. Okay? All y'all watching, I do it for you.
I'll be
I'm
drinking
watching that ice cream melt
I'm going to be drinking it here in a bit.
for you. All right, let's take a peek here. Okay, here we've got my, this is a frequency response chart. And what you can see here is we have a solid line and a dashed line. This manufacturer has actually shown us how the frequency response changes from full space to half space. And, notably and not surprisingly, remember wavelength, frequency dictates the wavelength, that once we get down here kind of below this break frequency, we see this boost in low frequency simply by putting against a boundary. So imagine that. But this also shows us this response. So let's just look at the solid line for the sake of, easy math. And, we'll say, here's our line or whatever. I'm just kind of sticking this somewhere. That, how far from the line does it deviate before we say it doesn't really do that anymore? I could say this speaker goes to 25 hertz.
Sure.
Just not very well at all, So how effectively does it go down there? Where is it effectively at, So.
So in that particular case, that one probably would have been getting down below 70, or it didn't have really much to give.
Yeah, and that's clearly a high frequency box. It's designed to be paired with a low frequency companion, but that's exactly the point. Is we know we can make an intelligent decision buying that loudspeaker.
Excellent.
So see what other goodies I got here for you. I guess that's about it.
Yeah. Well, we should wrap things up because I want to go in and make a bowl of ice cream before Brian comes on.
It's sad. It's
Oh, it's melted all over.
all over.
Oh my goodness, you'd be slurping that up. No. Well, we'll wrap things up tonight. Ben, thank you very much for your time tonight, and thank you guys for being on with us tonight. We had a lot of great viewers. We topped out over 100 here during the show tonight. So. Excellent.
Nice.
On all the different channels. If you guys have any questions or anything, you guys can just reach out, leave the questions in a comment or reach out to one of us for a future show. If there's something you'd like to see us cover, we're going to be coming back now that we're into the fall season with our Tuesday night spot. So if there's something that's burning, a question you've wanted to know, just reach out and let us know. Once again, Ben, thank you much and enjoy your ice cream.
I will. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Good night, everybody. We'll be back with Brian in about a half hour.